Cool.
I am so pleased to introduce restaurateur and hospitality hero, Mark Canlis. Mark is the owner and operator of Canlis, a family-owned and operated restaurant that's been a Seattle staple since 1950. I call Mark a hero because heroes inspire greatness in others simply by living their life as a model for us. And the Canlis family has been running a values-driven business long before it was a catchphrase, and it's paid off. Today, we're going to unpack what it took to create such a prolific brand, how the restaurants evolved as a result of the pandemic, and where Mark believes the industry is headed next. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Josh Kopel, a Michelin-rated restaurateur that spent the last 18 months talking about running restaurants instead of running them. I've done it with a singular goal in mind, and it's to figure out if there's a guaranteed recipe for success in the industry. I also host Full Comp, a podcast that airs twice daily, unpacking the tools, tactics, and strategies of our industry's greatest leaders. It's a selfish endeavor. I have the privilege of talking to folks I idolize, and I only ask the questions that I want to ask. But the town hall is your turn. Today, Mark Canlis answers your questions that you've asked, and I encourage you to use the chat function to ask questions throughout the conversation. If there's anything you want to dig deeper on, let us know. We're also leaving time for live Q&A at the end of the town hall. With that being said, welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us.
Josh, it's cool to be here. Thanks for having me.
Before let's dive right in. So the first question, there you are, there I am. You look much happier than me, and you look a lot smarter than me.
Why so sort of contemplative in that one, you know?
Right? I look so confused. Oh, flattery will get you everywhere. What was your vision for the restaurant when you took it over from your parents? And how did it differ from their vision?
Oh my gosh. All right. So just truth in advertising here. I wish I could tell you I had a really clear vision taking it over from my parents. I'm not sure we can paint the story that way as much as I'd like people to think that about me. I don't think it was clear. I think we spent a lot of time, both my brother and I, sort of sorting through the question, why do this at all? I think anyone in family business at some point runs into that question, and we certainly did. And I think it's a really important one. So the vision we kind of came to a little bit later, but maybe a more apropos answer I could give, like the mission, like the point of the company, or like the reason we wanted to be a part of it, was to inspire people to turn toward one another. And that is what we saw this brand having the sort of latent potential to do. It's what we saw the hospitality industry doing in its best moments and failing to do in its sort of weaker moments. And I think that's the thing that really, really drove us into this. And mom and dad are doing an incredible job, by the way. So I'm standing on their shoulders. They're standing on my grandparents' shoulders. So we clearly didn't. We started with a remarkable platform. But we saw this restaurant as an opportunity to really do some cool work in the world. And so that's what we set out to do.
I mean, it's a huge hurdle to articulate one's vision. But my question would be, how were you guys able to translate that vision into action?
So, with baby steps, like anyone, I was coming out of New York at the time. I thought I knew what I was doing. I'd been in the military for a little bit. I thought I had a lot of great ideas. Most of them were terrible. And those early years were really hard. So when you're putting this sort of grandiose vision into action, I think you got to do so with a lot of humility. I think you have to do so just by putting in your hours and doing a lot of hard work. It's really easy to sit back and sort of criticize the world and be like, hey, this is the way it should run. And then maybe you get a break and somebody puts you in charge and you just want to like wave a magic wand and make it happen that way. It's not how it happens. It's never how it happens. And so I think I made the mistake of thinking it would be easier than that, thinking the world's a little more black and white than I wanted it to be. And I think any business, particularly the restaurant business, which is all about relationships and people, it's more gray than we're maybe willing to admit. And that the tension of that necessitates a lot of work. It necessitates a lot of time. It necessitates a lot of steps and going through the motions and sort of earning your way in, because at the end of the day, this is all about trust. And if you want to earn someone's trust, then it's just going to be a lot of hard work. So that's a long way of saying I came in here maybe a little more like cavalierly than I should have. But again, Brian and I, my brother, we're 18 years in at it now. And I feel like we're just getting the hang of it. I think you have to just earn this thing night after night after night. And that starts with your team. And then it eventually gets to the guests. And if you're lucky, then, that works. But I would say you do it day by day, if that answers your question.
Well, let's talk about your day to day. This job pulls us in so many directions. How do you stay focused?
I don't try to focus on the job. I think to be awesome at work, you got to be awesome at home. And so to me, that's like the key to it. I have an incredible wife who's just really grounding and centering for me. I have 3 children who remind me daily sort of what the world is about. I try to read really selectively. I read a lot of scripture. I read a lot of classics. I stay out of social and generally out of the news, except for a small little aggregate newsletter that gets sent to me. So to me, if we're focusing on like who we're becoming as a human being, like what kind of father, what kind of husband, what kind of brother, what kind of member of the community or leader am I becoming, that allows me to show up at work and be really present for the staff and for the guests. It allows me to have a lot of clarity around what to do with the restaurant. I think when we focus on our work, we sort of lose the bigger picture around who we're becoming in life and what's going on in the world. So for me, that's how I do it. I think it starts at home and it starts with the self, and you sort of bring that into work. Yeah. To stay focused at business, I run away and hide at home.
Right, but it begs the question: are you busy? And what does busy look like for you?
Yeah, so busy. Look, any of us in the restaurant industry are busy. Any of us could spend 100 hours at work. I have done that. I that's fine for a season. I think the minute that season becomes, if we're really honest with ourselves, more than a season, becomes a habit, it's like a huge yellow caution flag to me. And I don't think it's necessary. I honestly don't think it's necessary. I think any job, you're just going to have to say to yourself, look, I'm going to make sacrifices. And my performance at work is probably going to suffer a little bit. And my performance as a human being is going to go up a little bit. And hopefully those two balance each other out. So I try to come into work by late morning, 10, 11. I try to get out of here by the same time, 10, 11 p.m. I'm always taking 2 days off. I don't check a single work email or a single work text on a day off, basically ever, unless it's my brother calling me. Would the restaurant be a better place if that weren't the case? Sure. Yeah, you might argue that. Yeah, I'd get 3 meals faster. Josh, I would respond to Jude a lot faster. Like, yeah, 100%. You could work all you want. I just don't know if I think one of the things the staff is looking for is as a leader they're hoping to become like. If we're really honest, I think I'm looking for that. And it's not just someone who crushes it professionally, but personally crushes it. And so if the leader at the end of the day can't find balance, or maybe is an incredible chef or restaurateur or industry leader in some way, but their marriage is falling apart, kids are a train wreck, like, that's just not someone that I want to emulate. And so I am desperate to become the kind of person who can succeed in both those worlds. And that's going to mean making a sacrifice at work. Yeah. End of story.
Does your brother feel the same way?
Say it again.
Does your brother feel the same way?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And look, it's a huge privilege to run a company with your brother. We divide the work. It's one of the things that has allowed us to be so successful. Because if I'm not here, he's got my back, and vice versa. You also divide the profit. So I'd have a lot more money if I didn't work with my brother, for sure. I also would have failed and not liked myself, and probably this restaurant would have run into the ground. So with all these things in life, I think we're trying to find ways to find a balance, and you have to give some things up. You can't have it all. So that's the discipline that I have been practicing for a lot of years, is how can I be content with what I have instead of always wanting for what I don't have. And I have a lot. And so it's, I have a lot to be thankful for.
How has fine dining changed due to the pandemic, at least in the way you define it?
What fine dining? I didn't know that fine dining survived through the pandemic. So for a lot of us in, fine dining, or just let's just take the word fine out of that, like dining, we've been on the struggle bus for a bit here. So for us early on, that'd be March. 2 Marches ago, we just decided that fine dining was a disservice to people, right? If we're trying to stay away from, or at least give space, suddenly having 20 people surrounding your table was not, there was nothing fine about that. It was kind of a disservice. So we went a different direction. We've just been practicing hospitality and staying on mission while not being a fine dining restaurant. I think a lot of restaurants we've seen have sort of changed in those ways. Now, of course, we're back to it, and the industry has changed quite a bit. I think in so many ways, a lot of people are more appreciative for the industry, and then there are some folks who have been cooped up for a long time and sort of emerging out of their isolation, and maybe they're a little cranky, and so we're having to make a lot more space for them, and that is an extra cost. Obviously, our industry has wrestled with finding employees. That started way before the pandemic. And so to blame it all on the pandemic, I think is bullshit. I think that's a leadership crisis that existed long before the pandemic. And now we are doubly paying the price. So yes, a lot of people left the industry during the pandemic. But if I'm honest, I think a huge piece or reason for that was because they were missing the kind of leadership that they deserved to have even before that. And the pandemic was just like the final straw. So finding people is a huge deal. I'm not concerned. People have been saying fine dining is going to go away for years. I've been listening to that for 20 years. I think bad fine dining will go away, and I think good fine dining will persist always. And it's up to us to be on the right side of that line. And that's our job, to figure out what that looks like. So we're going to have to, the work is in front of us right now to create an industry that works as an economic model, as a social economic model, as an environmental model, and certainly, like, first and foremost, from a human sustainability standpoint, fine dining has its work cut out for it. And I'm also really excited for what I think the future holds. We're loving what it's looked like since we've turned the restaurant. We were closed for 471 days. We turned it back on in July, and it's been really cool. I'm really proud of the team, and I've really enjoyed what's happening in the industry since. I think sort of our best days are ahead of us.
I want to talk about customer expectations, because I learned something really interesting as I evolved my brand over the years. It started with a casual bar in Hollywood. The expectations from customers were incredibly low. Can you get us hammered? Can you do it at a rapid pace?
Sure.
Pivoting into fine dining, where the pacing was very different, but the expectations were higher in a very different way. And then into fast casual, which is something you did during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And what I found was I just didn't like fast casual, because no matter how good the food was, if they didn't get it fast, they were incredibly angry. And it wore on my nerves over time. And so as someone that went from fine dining into casual back into fine dining, did you go a run-in?
Okay, first of all, we had so much fun with fast casual over the pandemic. I just have to say, thank you to everyone who put up with the crazy 2-hour lines and whatnot. I think within all of those, we're just talking about expectations, whether we're getting drunk with shots at a bar, or we're sitting down to a big fancy meal. I think restaurants have shot themselves in the foot in a lot of ways with expectations. And I also think guests have run amok in an irresponsible way with expectations. And what we're seeing right now in the whole dining industry is a reckoning and a righting of that a little bit. And it's really healthy. And that's going to be awkward. Like with all change, there's going to be this sort of period where everyone's trying to figure it out, where everyone's trying to like establish healthy boundaries. But man, thank goodness we're in that season, because I don't think we had great boundaries before. I think guest expectations got out of hand. And frankly, I blame the restaurants most for that. You could point the finger at the media if you want. I don't find that a healthy strategy for life. I think the media is always going to be the media. And so it's like complaining about a referee. Like nobody respects the team that complains about a referee. Referees are referees. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. So I feel like we have it, the onus is on us to set the guest up properly, to say, hey, this is what you can expect. This is why we're really excited to have you here. This is what we're looking to provide for you. And also here's the line. Here's the boundary. Here's what works for us. If we're in a relationship, meaning the restaurant and the guest is in a relationship, then it's incumbent on both parties of that relationship to really open and honest about what they bring to it and then the boundaries they need to uphold. And so right now, I think you're seeing that from restaurants a little bit. You're seeing that from service teams that just say to guests, you know what, there's a line and it's not okay for you to cross it. And I think that's really healthy. And I think it's going to take a bit for all of us to figure out what that sounds like and feels like, but it's important.
I couldn't agree with you more. What does the current gratuity model look like at Canlis? And how do you see it evolving over time?
Okay. This is such a good question. I see it getting better. I think we're coming a little bit out of the dark ages. I don't blame us for being there, but also like, I think it's time to move. And this is great. So a pandemic is a perfect excuse to do anything you want to your restaurant. Right now, your guests are going to be like, yeah, whatever. I understand you guys have a hard time. So if you want to make a change, like do it right now. Any change you could possibly ask for. We're just being given a lot of grace and margin. And I think what we're hoping to see maybe is some work in the world of gratuity. So we changed, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 4, I guess. It's all kind of a blur, but into a model where we charge a service charge. We pay our staff an hourly rate, and it's a really good hourly rate. And I love that model because I think you should have an upfront conversation with your team that just says, this is what you're worth. This is what we are like happily and willingly and look forward to paying you. And it is not based on whether you're having a good or bad night. It's not based on a model of gratuity that frankly is tired and a little bit weird. I am like horrified and shocked at the number of people that ask me for a tip. I think the service industry does this to itself, whether it is a cup of coffee out of a vending machine or like, everywhere I go now, I have a tip line in front of me that says, hey, 15, 20 or 25%. And I just think we're shooting ourselves in the foot with this. So I think that you should basically charge the price that you need to charge and come up with a business model that works. In restaurants, that's been really hard to do. The guest is not ready for that. And so you're seeing now the service charge model, which is just a way of saying out loud, hey, by the way, if we charged you the full amount for dinner, you'd probably freak out. So we're going to charge you the amount you're used to seeing and then put this 20% gratuity charge on. And so that to me is transition. We're going to be in that stage probably for 5 or 10 years. And eventually I think that may even go away and we just all start charging what dinner actually costs. But yeah, I've got a lot of space for societally for us to change in that. And that's going to be slow and we don't need to rush it, but we need to keep moving in the right direction.
Because generally tipping doesn't feel great.
I think when it feels like an obligation, the business model is a little broken, right? So, and I know a lot of people who tip strictly out of obligation. I know a lot of restaurants that charge a service charge and still have a tip line. And then I know a lot of guests that tip on top of that. And I'm just going to call bullshit on that right now. Like, it's not cool. Restaurants are making a ton of money off of it. And cheers to all the servers who are also making a great living wage off of that. I will also just say you're taking advantage of the guests. If you're telling them I charged you for service, and then you're sort of inferring to them or leaving it up to them, like that tip line is a major deal that just says, hey, I know we already charged you 18 or 20%. But wink, nod, come on, the line's still there for a reason. And you're just asking them to kind of be a jerk to put a zero on that line. And so at Canlis, we never do it. And I know a lot of restaurants do it. I also know the economics of doing it. And maybe that is their way of transitioning in a hard period. I feel like it isn't entirely on the up and up, and any relationship based out of dishonesty is one that I don't want to be a part of. So we're really straightforward with the guests. We're like, Canlis is super expensive, and on top of that, we're going to charge you gratuity. After that, we have zero expectations, like zero. There is no line. People do still come to us and say, can we tip? We're like, yeah, of course you're welcome to, but we have zero expectation. That's why you see nothing on the bill. So we're all still in this awkward like teenage phase of transitioning, tipping out of what it used to be from a hundreds of year old model into what it needs to be. I got a lot of space for that. But I do think it's a conversation we need to be having. And and I think there are better ways to do it than we have historically.
Well, yeah, because we could talk for hours about the customers and how to communicate that to our customers. But there's also something to be said for the fact that like our service staff is terrifying. And I'm not particularly interested in having that conversation with them as well, so that they can walk out if they're not averaging $50 an hour.
Yeah, yep. I had someone interview here the other day who we really liked, and we're like, hey, this is super cool. We'd love to have on board. You know, we start everyone kind of 20 or $22 an hour. And she's like, no, I start at 50. And I was like, you have zero experience in the industry. She's like, well, I'm just worth $50 an hour. It's like, cool, good for you. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to pay that to you. So I think as expectations start to normalize a little bit, I am all for paying servers more. And I think the restaurant can take that on and then bear the onus of it by charging a service charge. That's been the model that works for us. Again, it's a little different when you're in fine dining. It's a little different when your price point changes around. But I think more and more you're seeing hospitality industry sort of move in this direction. So
for sure.
Yeah.
What pandemic pivots did you make that became permanent changes?
So we had 18 different business models in those 471 days. I don't think any of them are going to be permanent. For folks that don't know, we turned our parking lot like into a movie theater or like a crab shack restaurant, or we did a community college for a little bit. None of those are really sustainable for us while we're running a restaurant. We're just like small brained people and can't multitask like that. So most of that stuff's going to go away. We did put something on our roof called the Treehouse. And we're all kind of in love with it. It's like super charming. It's essentially a tent on the roof that is the greatest table on the planet. And I know that's hyperbole, but it could also, there's a chance that it's true. It's really special up there. I could see that coming back, just making that permanent. But right now, we really just want to focus on what it looks like to run a normal restaurant. And I think the change that we want to see, or to use the P word again, like if we're going to pivot anything moving forward, it's the industry. It's the healthy boundaries, the healthy lifestyle, the making this a place where people can come and stay and flourish. And I think a lot of people found the industry the exact opposite of that, almost toxic in so many restaurants. That word is probably not too strong. And so to me, if we're going to put any creative energy around restaurants right now, it's how to make them sustainable. I think that is where all of our hope lies, and all of our sort of creative efforts right now are going into that. At Canlis, we're playing with a 4-day work week. Like, what if that were possible? And what does 3 days off in a row look like in the restaurant industry? We're playing with shutting down for holidays. We just shut down for Thanksgiving for 5 days over that. We've never done that in 71 years. And we're like, man, what if we could use a to-go kit in order to shut the restaurant down? Like, none of us ever had that break before. And it was hard. I'll just be honest. It was like we made 450 Thanksgiving meals which crushed us beforehand. But then we all had 5 days off, which is amazing. So we're just trying to understand what it looks like. What are some of the things we learned about the pandemic? Like, hey, we could put food in a box and sell it for a lot of money that we could use to make a non-pandemic restaurant industry sustainable. So that's what we're doing with some of those pivots. Those are what we're doing with those lessons. And And frankly, I'm stoked about it. Like I'm excited about what we're seeing. So
let's talk about mindset. So everyone wants to do those things, and so everyone has plans. Once I make a certain amount of money, once we achieve this milestone or this benchmark, then we'll become the restaurant we want to be. For me, it was we wanted to offer subsidized healthcare. And like the only reason we got around to it was because before we were ready, we just offered it. And then somehow, miraculously, we were able to afford it. How did your mindset change from achieving these metrics to eventually do something to just ripping the Band-Aid and doing it?
Yeah, my wife was like, there's never a good time to have a baby.
Amen.
But you always thought you'd be a father and a family man. So like,
right.
We'll get to that place where like it makes sense to have one, right? And she's like, guess what? Like, there's nothing more inconvenient on the planet than a baby. So like, you just gotta bite the bullet. And I think you're 100% right with healthcare. Like, if you believe in it, you just got to do it. It's not a value until it costs you something. We've been doing healthcare since the beginning in this company, so I can tell you it works. It completely works. And you can build that into your business model. And so whatever that is, if that is the way that you hire or who you hire or the way that you train or whatever parameter you want to build, you just sit down and you put it on paper and you make it work. You say, great, we're going to build a business model where this is one of the rules to the game. And look, one of the great privileges of being a business person in this country is that most of those rules we get to determine. That is an incredible freedom and a liberty that we're all enjoying. And sure, there's the government, and sure, there's taxes and stuff. Those are big things. I'm talking about the really important things where we get to decide the way we run our company. And at some point, you just got to say, hey, if you're a person that believes in exercise, then today is the day of your first workout. If you're a person that believes in eating right, today you got to do that. Like there isn't ever going to be a good time for it. And no one's ever going to come along and like pull you off your couch and give you a custom written invitation to get your ass in shape. Like, so I just feel like I'm wrestling with those things. So speaking for myself here, these are the issues I'm wrestling with personally. And I think as a company, you do the same thing. You say to yourself, what is it that I believe in? And what is no longer okay? It's funny, yesterday in the meeting, we have this huge copper counter, right, in the dining room. And if you know anything in copper, if you touch it, it's just like a tray, like it's it wants to turn. So we buff it every day. And then we used to do it by hand, like when I was a kid. And now we have this buffer. Well, it's like a, electric little thing, and it makes a heinous sound. And the thing's been getting worse and worse over the years. So I finally said in the meeting, I was like, I am no longer okay with the sound of this thing. Like it's an oral assault on all of our like side work. And I hate it. Like, it's not okay. Like I'm going to spend any amount of money to get a silent orbital, polisher. And I think at some point we have to say to ourselves, what in your company is no longer okay? Like the sound of that thing, like I'm throwing it away. And again, like this is what's so exciting about being a restaurant right now is that we get to do this. The pandemic was the best excuse to say out loud to your guests, hey, this is how we're going to run our company. And if Canlis can do it after 7 decades, trust me, like, and trust me, like we went to places that terrified our guests and we ran a bingo show for crying out loud, like stuff you wouldn't think that an old fine dining restaurant would be able to pull off. And I think the guest has more space for us than we could possibly imagine, particularly if we're doing it eyes wide open and if we're really serving their needs and really attuned to who they are and what they need right now. So that's what fine dining is. It's paying attention in a thoughtful way to what does it look like now to serve somebody. It isn't what we thought was cool yesterday. It's actually hearing them, actually listening to them, and actually saying, I see you. And because I've seen and heard you, look, I've created this thing for you. Fine dining is the most considered form of dining. It's the most considered form of caring for someone else. That's what we're talking about when we talk about fine dining. So now's the most exciting time, I think, to be in that business because people's needs are high. Yeah.
You're my
It was
hero.
a really long answer too.
That was, but it was so good. It was so
Sorry.
good. I guarantee
I don't even remember what the original question was.
there was like midway through it, I assure you, there was like a slow clap that somebody started that other people joined. It really was. It was, yes. It was so
Sorry.
good. Oh,
Yeah, it's just,
that is
we can get back
exactly
to it. What topic are we on right now?
What's that? Well,
Right. You can just interrupt. Sometimes I get kind of like fired
no,
up.
I loved it. I really did. I mean, I
Right.
think that these are the conversations we need to be having.
All right. What does growth look like for Canlis?
Yes. Share.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Can we talk about growth?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Interrupt me because if I go on a little rant on this one,
I enjoyed it.
can we get over that word?
Yes.
Like I said, I don't know if you asked this one or some of that. So I'm not trying to insult anyone who asked this. So let's just talk about this real quick. Growth looks like human beings flourishing. And if you have the great privilege of running your company, you have, I think, an obligation to make sure that human beings are flourishing. That's what growth looks like. I don't care how many units that looks like or what revenue looks like. I think profit is a rule to the game. So in this world, you got to make a certain amount of money or you won't be able to pay your bills and other people are going to take all your stuff. That's just a rule of the game, but that's not like the reason that we play it. So at Canlis, growth looks like my staff fully becoming the kinds of people they're hoping to become. It looks like them fully alive. It looks like them achieving their hopes. And I'm talking about professionally or in a career sense. I'm talking about like things that will get said at their funerals. And as their employer, as their boss, as a peer, as a friend, as someone who just works alongside them for 12 hours a day, man, what a beautiful opportunity to be a part of that journey. And conversely, if you don't want to be a part of that, get the hell out of the business because that is your job as a leader, is to shepherd and to steward and to care for the people that have signed up to work with you. So that's growth. And when a restaurant is growing like that, 110 employees who are fully alive and flourishing as humans, your business is going to kick ass. So like, it's like a no-brainer. So if you were to pay attention to the people, and if you were to allow them the space to fully become who they're hoping to become, then at the table, they're going to do remarkable things for the guest. And in the kitchen, they're going to be able to handle like immeasurable things. So like, I just think we start upside down when we say, growth. Everyone wants Canlis to open another restaurant. I don't know. I think we should take a thermometer and measure the spiritual, emotional, relational, professional health of my team, and then say, what does growth looks like? Because I guarantee we're not scoring well in all those things. So my work is to grow in those ways. And maybe one day if we have the margin to do something else, okay, cool. That might grow our reputation, that might grow my wallet. But if it's not growing me as a person and my family and my restaurant family, it seems like a distraction. Yeah. So anyway, ghost kitchens are super cool. Love them. Love to own one. We've looked at a bunch of real estate over the pandemic. Sorry, I'm going to come off the rant for a little bit. A lot of companies grow by adding restaurants and stuff. That just hasn't been our personal story. Maybe it will be one day or not. I think, again, I get back to the mission of this company is to inspire people to turn toward one another. Maybe the best way we could pull that mission off is by having 20 restaurants or like a movie theater or, I don't know, a whirly ball stadium. But maybe it just looks like running one restaurant. I don't know yet. Right now, we got our hands full just taking care of our team and ourselves. We're coming off a really intense period. The last couple of years have been exhausting. And so we're kind of focused just inward right now.
What does accountability look like with regard to your team? Because I've got to believe that if you're going to create that space has to be created with intention, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think accountability is one of the most, well, let me say it differently. I think if you love your team, you can't not hold them accountable. So that's to say, it would be disserving of one of my employees to let them get away with breaking a standard or breaking one of the values, because essentially I'm seeing them fail in little micro pieces. And because I'm a conflict avoider, or I don't want to hold them accountable, or I don't know how to do it without creating conflict, or I'm uncomfortable with the conflict I might create, I choose to stay in comfort and I choose to let them fail. This is like one of the great mistakes in leadership. And I think one of the most selfish things that we do as leaders is to allow our people to fail in really small ways. By the way, I also see us doing this societally all the time. So it's not like anyone gets a free hall pass from this. I think there's so much room relationally, even with strangers, even with guests, even with people who don't look like us and think like us. There's so much room for dialogue and for conflict and for listening that suddenly accountability becomes a lot easier. There's a lot of room for me to say to one of my employees, hey, I thought this was the standard. I saw you do it that way. Man, if that becomes a habit, that's not going to go well for you. And I care too much about you to let you get away with that. So what can I do? Can I add clarity around that? Or is there anything I can do? Is this a standard that you're hoping to keep? And do you know why you're failing in this way? Let's explore that a little bit together. To me, accountability looks like coming alongside and saying, I'm in this with you. And we all agreed to keep a certain standard. Can I be a part of that process and a part of that journey with you? So to not do that is to set them up for failure.
Do you worry, though, that it'll alienate your team?
Say it again.
Do you worry that that'll alienate your team, though? Or do you
feel
like
it does the exact opposite. It does the exact opposite, because they start to see you actually care about them. Again, not caring would look like just letting them get away with it. And a little mistake becomes a bigger mistake, becomes a bigger mistake, becomes a bigger mistake. By the way, this is how most sexual harassment happens. Just little things, people get away with little things, they grow into bigger things, they grow into bigger things. So like, I think in all of these ways, we do ourselves and the people we love such a favor to come alongside and to engage and to be present early on and to say, with curiosity, hey, tell me about that. I thought the standard was this. I saw you do that. I'm curious, what's going on here? Am I not understanding it, or are you not understanding it? Or let's get on the same page. Those little, 100 little tiny conversations keep you from ever having to have the really big ones. And I think what happens relationally is we let the little things happen, and that gap starts to do this and starts to do this. And suddenly we fear like, man, I'm really far away from that person. We just don't see eye to eye. And it's like, well, yeah, you missed 100 little opportunities to keep it close. And, I've made this mistake so many times. I'm just speaking from experience here. It's so much easier early and often to come alongside someone and to approach this with curiosity and say, hey, where are we at? I want to make sure that we're on the same page. I care about you too much to let us kind of get off like that.
It's great advice. We'll file that under how to manage millennials and all people.
Yeah, millennials get a bad rap. I mean, they might be hard to manage. The next group might be hard to manage. I think that categorizing people as hard to manage is a bad habit, sort of like blaming things on referees and media. Yep, they're different. And guess what? So am I. And guess what? All of life is about navigating people's differences. So in hospitality, we should be the best at this. We're the ones who practice making space for the stranger, right? So that's our jam if you're in hospitality. And I feel like, if that is what we're doing day to day, we should be the ones who are really good at navigating that societally outside of the restaurant, if that's what we're practicing inside the restaurant. So, all right, next question. Let's see. What does Canlis marketing strategy look like for 2022? It looks like me and my brother hanging out in this room, just sort of making it up again. We don't have a PR team. They're awesome. I wish we had one. They're really expensive. And we tend to have more fun just sitting together as a team, planning stuff that we would enjoy. That's how we did all that stuff in the pandemic. We haven't had a marketing team for a number of years now. And so we do it all in-house. And I think it's, again, like if you want to be good at marketing, I think you have to open your eyes I'm looking at the world. That's what I'm looking at, right? And it's like really awesome to have a view, but I think you got to open your eyes and just say, this is where the world's at right now, and this is what they need. And it's our job to serve them. So what does that look like? What would serving them look like? And the hard news is that means like we might have to change, right? And no one ever wants to do that. They always want to point the finger and like, that guy needs to change. That's never going to work. So for us, we take marketing the exact same way. We just say, okay, like what does Seattle need right now? What are they hearing? What are they lacking? And is there any way that we can come alongside our city, our guests, and be a part of sort of their experience right now? So that's marketing. We try to be super transparent about it. I think any brand that has the guts to let themselves be seen as human is going to win in 2022. Any brand that is too scared of that is eventually going to lose, particularly with the aforementioned millennials. It's like, they're over it. I think we're all over leaders who are not able to or pretend that they're not human and pretend that they don't make mistakes. And I think eventually we'll get over brands who are going to sort of put that same false front up there. So for us, marketing looks like being really honest, even in our mistakes, even in the goofy things that we screw up on, and trying to be present just with the people that we're trying to serve.
I think it's so important that you say that, because I think that the biggest hurdle for most restaurant owners and operators is getting out there. The chefs out there get a ton of credit. It's very easy for them to stand out front because what they do is super tactile, right? Whereas what we do is a bit nondescript, right? If someone was to photograph me at work, it would look like me bussing a table or sitting at a laptop. And
Yes.
But storytelling is the only way to effectively market.
Yeah, I think that I think we were almost getting the hang of it, and then like social really messed with our heads a little bit. So that I agree with you. Storytelling always works. I think we got to be really careful. Is the story drawing attention to ourselves, or is the story giving something? And for Brian and I, particularly around social, we try to put nothing out there that doesn't give as much as it takes. I think that it's all about relationship, and it's human nature for us to kind of run away from relationships that take more than they give. And it's human nature for us to turn towards relationships that are good at giving. And so as a brand, I want to make sure that what Canlis is doing is putting something out there that isn't just saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. Nobody wants to hang out with that guy. I don't want to be that guy. So like, I don't want the restaurant to be that guy, right? And so we just got to figure out like, okay, are we worth listening to? And honestly, the honest truth is a lot of people aren't. So you need to shut the F up, go do something worth other people paying attention to, and then tell your story, right? And I think what happens with a lot of marketing is people say, well, we got to market ourselves. No, you don't have to market yourselves. You have to do good work, a shit ton of it, and then do it again, and then do it again, and then do it because you believe in it, and do it because you love it, and do it because the work is helping you become who you're hoping to become. And then maybe someone will tell that story. That's marketing.
I couldn't agree with you more. What about pricing? How are you combating rising inflation without pricing yourself out of the competition?
We were really scared to raise prices. I think we just got to get over that. So we are not combating inflation. We're adding to it. Sorry, everyone. We raised our prices. Again, that's a pencil and a piece of paper. We just looked at this and said, our business model is not sustainable. Food is so expensive. People are so expensive. Seattle is really expensive. That view is really expensive, and we're not being honest with our guests. We're like protecting them from the true cost. And I don't know, we were doing that like out of a place of insecurity or something, because now I charge $165 for dinner. I'm scared you're going to look at it and say, what the hell is this? But what it is us, like, it's up putting our best foot forward, and it's scary. It's vulnerable. It is vulnerable to charge a lot. I'm horrified at the prices that I see around the country when I dine out. So there is taking that too far. And I just pray to God that we haven't done that. But we did raise our prices significantly coming out of the pandemic because this is a really hard time to be a restaurant. It just is. And I think it's okay to let our prices reflect that. Again, like, my staff has been in front of the public every day of this pandemic. We never stopped serving people. That's emotionally exhausting. It's physically risky for your health. And it takes a toll. And so I don't mind charging a little bit for that. I really don't. But I think you got to say that out loud. You go like, hey, look, it's more expensive because we're all trying to figure this out. I'm not apologizing, but I'm also just want to be honest with our guests. Like, this is what's going on. So yeah, I think we might have added to inflation. I don't know how that works, but you can blame us.
Do you have systems in place to ensure profitability? I know you said that it is your obligation to profit. How do you ensure that you do?
No, it's not an obligation. It's a rule to the game, and it's a rule you can break. Like, sports is a good analogy. The rule says in football that if you fumble or throw an interception, the other team, has a chance of getting the ball. That's not the end of the game. It just kind of sucks, right? Like, it's going to be harder to win, right? And I would say the same thing. You don't have to make money. We definitely did not make money during the pandemic, right? But it was like, wait a second, is this the right time for our business to be? It didn't feel right. A lot of the stuff we did in the pandemic, we made those fundraisers for nonprofits because it felt like we had been saving up money for big remodels. So we're really fortunate to have money in the bank, a remodel that we didn't do because of the pandemic. And we thought maybe we can use our platform for something better than raising money this year because shit's getting crazy out there. And it feels weird to be stashing away in the bank. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It felt weird for us in that time. So this is a different time. I'm definitely trying to make money right now because we need some, because the rule says if you spend it all, at some point you got to get it back. So it's not an obligation. It's a rule to the game, and sometimes you can break that rule. In fact, sometimes it may even help to break that rule, or it may help to have the freedom to break that rule. We have definitely lost money in the past, but by and large, you need to be making more than you're losing for sure. So systems in place? No, we don't. We take it case by case, and we just figure out what feels right for the restaurant to stay on its mission.
Are you guys struggling to hire?
Yes and no. We're hiring a lot of people. We're really fortunate. There's not a lot of restaurants like ours in Seattle. It's still a really lovely town to live in. A lot of people move here for other reasons. It's hard to find people. So I don't want to paint some picture that they're just all, banging down the doors to get in. I think we're more struggling to train. Canlis spawned off 5 new restaurants in the last 5 months. So we lost a lot of staff to those awesome opportunities. And that's just, you got employees that have been with you for 5-10 years. You just can't replace that with a few hard weeks of training. So we're a young staff right now. I'll say this, finding a pastry chef is impossible right now. I don't know where they all went, but I hope they got raptured up into heaven or something. What the hell? So totally looking for a pastry chef right now. So I think it's hard because everyone is looking, and I think it's hard because the industry is in such a weird state of transition. There's massive demand. And frankly, we haven't put our industry back in order quite right yet. And so there's a lot of just feeling this thing out right now. So it's hard. I'm not concerned about it, but it's definitely hard.
Are you guys doing anything in particular to lure talent, or just standard stuff?
No. Oh man, look at that word. No, go back to that slide. I mean, if you think about the idea of luring talent, can we just stay here for a second?
It's creepy. I wouldn't argue the point. It's definitely creepy.
Yeah, creepy is like, the right word for it. Like lure is like to try to trick someone that this would be good for them. My whole goal in interviewing someone is to be as transparent as I can. Like, hey, this is what you're signing up for. Don't fall in love with the movie star on the screen. Like here's the honest truth of what you're getting. And if this place would be good for you, I'm crazy not to hire you. And if this place would not be good for you, I'm selfish to hire you. So like, that's the idea, I think, behind all hiring. And if I'm honest, I think a lot of people have been burnt by either being lured in or they've burnt their company by tricking the company that it would be good for them. So that's a two-way street for sure. And I think we got to get way better at dating, at engaging in these relationships. The employer-employee relationship thing is broken, and we can do way better than that. So yeah, sorry. It's triggered by the word lure.
I understand.
Dishonest hiring bugs the crap out of me. So I just feel like it's our job to create a place where people can flourish. So be honest in an interview. Be like, hey, this is what it's like here. Is that good for you? That's the question I ask everyone. I'm like, I would hire you. I don't know if you should work here. Go home, call your mother, wake up your boyfriend. I don't care what you do, but like go ask someone who loves you deeply if they think you should work here, because I'm biased. I want you to be here, and they're not biased. They love you. And you go tell them what it was like to stage with us or what it was like to interview here for 10 crazy hours. And then if they think you should be a part of this team, let's talk.
I think it's great advice, man.
Yeah. I say that at every interview.
How do you manage guest expectations relative to the needs of the business? For example, how do you deal with campers when a table needs to be turned?
I have never in my whole life rushed a table off of a table. It's not a business model. It's not a company that I want to work for. That is also a privilege that fine dining enjoys that lower price point restaurants do not enjoy. So I want to be really upfront about that. I charge a fortune to be here. If you want to spend 10 hours here, I can't blame you. I've spent my life making it awesome. I would spend 10 hours having dinner here also. So we just bite the bullet. We lower guest count and we allow for some tables to sit all night long. It sucks for profitability. Yup, it's awesome to work in that environment where you really have the space and freedom to actually care that this chair that I'm sitting in is 71 years old. It cost me a couple grand to rebuild them all the time. It's the most comfortable chair I've ever sat in a restaurant. And I can't say that for 90% of the restaurants I eat in. I sit down and I'm like, you assholes want me to get up in 78 minutes because my ass is going to be tired in about 72. Like, it's not cool. And I understand that it's an important part of the business model. I will say this to fine dining restaurants. I don't think it's cool. And for those that of a much lesser price point who are obviously needy of that turn, I think there's really awesome ways to do it. But at the end of the day, if a table is going to stick around, that's their prerogative. That's what we signed up for. So make a little space for that. Have the business model make a little space for that.
So is there any room on the other side of that? So are there 45-minute waits to get seated at Canlis? Does that happen? And if so, how do you message it for the people that aren't going to, for the people that are waiting to be seated?
Our old maitre d' used to say, a reservation earns you the right to wait in our bar. I'm like horrified by that statement, but just so we're all true about the past, the 50s and 60s were a different time. But no, I like sweat bullets when we go past reservation time. I feel horrible. And so the move is to walk off of that maitre d' stand into the lounge and say, look, I see you. Your reservation time was 8 minutes ago, and I have not forgotten about you, and I do not have a table, and I feel horrible about this. And tonight's going to be awesome. But this is on me right now, and I see you. So just know that. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes you got to buy them a drink. Sometimes you got to figure something else out. Mostly guests just want to be seen. They want to know that they exist. And it's horrifying how often restaurants fail at that. So no, like a 5-minute wait, that happens a lot here. A 10-minute wait, we start feeling really bad. Above 10 to 15, I am like sweating and stressed out and a grumpy human being. But like, you don't ever let that show at the table. It's not okay. Figure that out. I have brought tables in. I put them on the roof. Yep. This is what makes us good. Have fun with it. Get after it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to leave time. So if you guys, I'm going to stop with questions before to give you guys time to ask questions in the Q&A and chat. We have a question from Kevin Walters. Why would someone have left your company pre-pandemic?
Why?
Yeah.
Oh, we're like as messed up as any company. We're not perfect. Hopefully they're leaving for the right reasons. And if they're not, that's a conversation I'm going to have, which is like, prove to me that this is the very best thing for you. Because if it's not, I'm going to fight for you to stay. And if it is, I'm going to fight for you to leave. Like, I'm on your team. Let's just make sure this is the very best thing for me. So this company should be a springboard for them. And we're lying to ourselves if we think it's anything other than that. So they leave for all kinds of good reasons. Amy came back. She left us a little bit ago, took this risky position. She'd never done it before. She became a manager of a brand new restaurant and she's crushing it. She's been promoted a couple of times. Like she's making all this money now. She's like awesome. And she's like the future of this industry. Like that is what I live for. So if there's an opportunity, when you see one of your employees, that opportunity is down the road and you can be the bridge to get them there, man, what a gift that is to be a part of their story in that way. So we're often looking for ways for staff to leave. If they're not growing here, that's on me. So that's why they would leave, is hopefully look, 1% of them might retire here. So 99% of them, my job is to help them leave well, to find them the chances to go back to school, to go do something, get closer to your family, like whatever the case may be. And if they're not going to leave well, then I'm gonna lean in on them and be like, I don't know if this is it's the right call. My service director tried to leave 10 years before he actually left. He's like, I gotta leave. I'm like, I don't know if that's what's best for you. And he became the service director and was here for a long time. So like sometimes I think we all need help, figuring out these big life steps. And I think your boss should be a key piece of that process.
What's one piece of advice that you would offer a first-time restaurateur?
Okay.
Don't do it.
No, you can do it. It's going to be way harder than you think. And most of the stuff you think matters doesn't matter. So that's going to be really confusing for you for the first several years. And you're probably not good enough. And that's okay. You're going to need to decide to stick it out. And you can't get angry at your guests because it's you that's not good enough. This is one of the hardest businesses in the world. I'll stand by that all day long. But what's really hard about it is the carving out of space for other people. And I would say focus on your ability to lead. There's some rules to the game, like don't poison people, have a clean bathroom, food's got to be good, that kind of stuff. But like, you need to understand what kind of leader you are and what the point of that company is. Most people I talk to who are opening restaurants are probably doing it for the wrong reason. Yeah.
How are you preparing the restaurant to operate when you are no longer working?
Poorly.
Maybe dead? I don't know.
Yeah.
How would you ensure the legacy of your style of hospitality lives on in your restaurant?
Yeah, I don't think it has to. First of all, I don't think it has to. I would love for Canlis to one day be 1 million years old. That's cool. Or have like our great like, but like, okay. Or can we get over that? Like, I don't want to like throw mud on it in any way. It would be a huge honor if my children ever wanted to do this. I don't know if they'll be qualified for it or want to. Be a big deal if their kids ever want, but like also like maybe we just need to get over that. Maybe that's not the best thing for them, or maybe the restaurant isn't good enough to be 80 or 90 or 100 years old, and that's okay too. I'm 100% working to get it that place, but it's got to earn it. It's got to earn it every night, and if the people running it aren't up for that task, then we can say goodnight and we can say, hey, that was a great run. You got to earn it. And so I don't know who's going to run it when I'm not here. I'm always looking for folks. Maybe that's a former employee. There's so many of them that have come through this place that could probably just crush it. Maybe that's a family member. It's not something we talk about with our kids, hardly ever, because if they want to work here, they're going to have to earn it just like everyone else. And I don't know. Yeah. There's no
The last question is going to come from Jeannie Ann Madden. What is the wrong reason why people start a restaurant?
Thanks for asking that question. They think the world needs another restaurant. That's one wrong reason. They think they're a good cook. That's like one of the worst. To get attention is like one of the saddest reasons. Like the ego. I think anything around that is like a recipe for complete failure yep. But I think often it's people love restaurants. Like, oh, I love restaurants and I love food and I love people. And then they make the mistake of drawing the conclusion, so I should open one. Like, no, you should eat in them all the time. Or you should like tip crazy, or you should just, I don't know, but like that logic isn't logic. The jump of like, I love people and food, and so I should open a restaurant. It's not, I just want to say to the world, like, that isn't math. That math isn't adding up. It's not actually logic. I see how they do it, but like, no, I'm just going to say no to that. Yeah. That's mostly what I hear. It's like, I love people and food. It's like, okay.
Yeah, for sure. The barrier to entry is far too low. Is ultimately what it comes down to.
It's really low. But also, you know what? I frequent a dozen restaurants that started that way. And what do I know? So I think that's the beautiful thing about this country. I think that's the beautiful thing about work ethic. I think I wouldn't stop someone from doing what they believe is going to bring them fulfillment. Bring it on. I think it's good for our industry in that way. And I think we have a lot of lessons to learn. So yeah, it's tricky, but I love it. I would say the right reason is if you believe that company is going to help you become the kind of man or woman you want to become, that's a good reason. Figure that out. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Canlis. He was my hospitality hero before, but I know he's yours now. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it.
Honor to be with you guys. Thank you.